What's going on, everybody? I hope you're having a fantastic day today. Today we're going to be talking about 3 rules that you can easily break when you're making your Swiss design posters. Now keep in mind, this video isn't necessarily for beginners or students in design because there are some fundamentals that you need to learn before you can break these rules. However, even that statement isn't necessarily a hard, fast rule. At the end of the project, you want to make sure that it's visually pleasing and it communicates the message. Okay, so the first rule is you do not have to use a grid. I know that there are a lot of design professors out there right now that are sounding off their alarms and going nuts. But it is true when you consider there are a lot of designers out there who have been doing this for so long that they understand the relationship between the elements that they're working with. And when you understand that relationship for the most part, you can easily do away with the grids. So I'm going to design 2 posters in Illustrator very quickly, one using a grid, one without, and let's see if you can spot a difference. Okay, so really quickly, and of course, all of you knew that I was gonna choose the Sundays for this, but it's just a song that's been stuck in my head all morning. Anyway, so this first one right here on the left, this red poster, was designed using a grid. So what we've got here is I've got all of the text right here aligned to the outer portions of the grid, and then doing the same thing here with the text at the bottom. Actually, it looks like I may have gone just a little bit outside of that. Okay, so let's just kind of move that right there. And then the sun, or this yellow circle right here, obviously within the confines of the grid as well. So if you look at this one right here, you can see that when I was putting the elements on here, I didn't have the grid up, but as you can see, like, I understand the relationship of the elements enough because I've been doing this long enough to where I put it together in such a way that I still know it's going to be visually pleasing. So we've got plenty of negative space right here. And when we have our grid actually pulled up, you can see that for the most part, this actually is within, the confines of the grid. This one right here, this text definitely goes outside of it, but just by a little bit. And then the same thing here with this yellow circle. So really what I did here is I put a 1.5 inch margin around all of the sides. So all of these elements have that 1.5 inch margin, and I didn't even consider a grid, but they look like they easily flow from one to the next. Now, the one thing that I would change here, if this were actually for a client, is I would actually go in and make sure that I am not going outside of those bounds of the grid when it comes to this ellipsis right here. And the way I would do that is simply by adjusting the text size. So that's rule number 1. You don't always have to use a grid. All right, rule number 2 is you do not have to use a sans serif typeface. And again, I know there are a lot of people out there who are freaking out. And really, when you're talking about the principles of Swiss design, just break it down to the bare minimum. A clear, concise typeface, using a couple of basic geometric elements, and providing a good balance of those elements along with balance of color. I've seen many Swiss design posters out there that have a serif typeface or something completely different. I made this video above my head about a year ago, and it features these posters right here, which is what I like to call modern Swiss posters. And as you can see, it is following those rules of traditional Swiss design, and the only real difference here is I'm not using a sans serif typeface. This particular one here is called Aglet Mono, and that's an Adobe font. Okay, so now for a demonstration, I'm gonna cause some palpitations out there in design professors. I'm just gonna bring these exact same elements over here, but I'm gonna give it a different color treatment. So before we align anything to the grid, we have to first change everything to Times New Roman. And actually it is looking pretty cool with that yellow against that white background, but I think I'm just gonna darken it a little bit, down to about a 70 though. I like that gold. And then we'll darken this to about right here. Cool. All right, so now let's bring up our grid and let's start aligning things exactly to it. So I'm gonna align left to this part of the T right here, and the reason why is because that is what's actually considered to be the outer edge of that capital T. What's outside of that is actually considered part of the serif, which could be considered an ascender or descender only going sideways. So just keep that in mind whenever you're aligning a serif typeface to a grid that actually goes out of bounds a little bit. And then just to separate it a little bit from what we've already done, maybe we'll do something like this. and just kind of create like a lemon or something. I really am overthinking this for something that is not a client project. Okay, cool. So the only thing that I would probably go in here and change is maybe the line height right here or the leading. And the reason why is because when you go from a sans serif typeface to a serif typeface, it all works so differently with each other, and you have to make sure that you're adjusting for the relationship of the typefaces that you're working with. So for the serif face right here, I'm definitely going to go ahead and decrease that line height a little bit more. And then I'll do the same thing down here, just a little bit, not too much. And then we'll align the baseline of this type, which is right where that lowercase I is right there, to that grid. Okay, so if this looks familiar, it's probably because there are a lot of designers out there who are starting to use more serif typefaces. And I think it's a great thing. It just depends on what you're using it for. Does it communicate the message of the brand? And is it visually pleasing? If so, go for it. All right, so the third rule that I want to talk about is using photography in your Swiss Design posters. It's something that we don't see too much of anymore. We see a lot of visual elements mixed with typography, but it's rare that we see a lot of photography used in today's Swiss Design posters. And if you go back to the origins of Swiss Design, back when it was really popular through the 50s and the 60s, you will see a lot of photography used with the style. So I found just a few examples right here. This is one of the most famous Swiss Design posters of all time. And as you can see, it is using a photo right here combined with the text. And then doing the same thing here for these street advisory signs. And then this one right here from, I think, 1958, also using photography combined with Swiss Design. So obviously when you're putting stuff like this together, you have to do a little bit more planning because you have to know where your photo is going to go. And it always helps to know ahead of time which photo you're going to be working with. So let's go out to Unsplash and see what we can find. So I like this photo right here, and it really does look like it's hand in hand in a park, which perfectly goes with our lyrics. So let's resize this to an 18 by 24 inch. Okay, so there's the size of our poster. So we have our composition right here. So we have an idea of what we're going to be doing. So now what we need to do is we need to figure out what style we're going to be going for this poster design. And when I say style, I don't mean Swiss or not, I mean the style of the photography itself. So for something like this, because we're going to be overlaying type on top of it, I think we should probably do a nice dramatic black and white. So I'll just add this black and white filter right on top right here, and I'll just kind of play around with the colors a little bit. We want to give some nice contrast, but we don't want to bring up too many of those defects that are in the original photo. And we don't want to blow anything out either. We want to make sure that we give plenty of contrast between the elements that are in the photo. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is add a solid color layer of just solid white, and we're going to bring it down to about probably 60% or so. So that way you can still see that these two are holding hands at the park and everything, and we're just gonna put our type right on top of this. So I'm gonna copy this over directly from Illustrator. I'm not gonna worry too much about the colors at this point because we can always change the colors later in Photoshop. And I'm not gonna add my Swiss Design grid here, but I am just gonna put one down of 1.625. And I'll work with that. So this yellow right here is obviously not gonna work, so we need to do something a little bit different. How about maybe like a nice summery type of blue? We'll go a little bit darker with that. And I'll just kind of go a little bit in this direction here to kind of take out some of that saturation. And then we'll bring this right over here, and we'll just kind of do the same thing at the bottom. And then I'll change this color right here as well. I think I'll do some kind of maybe like a gold or something. Or actually, that's not really working out too well. So let's look into maybe like a red, like a kind of like a strawberry red, where it just has that little bitty hint of orange in it. And then I'll add in our little yellow dot right here. And I'm not going to be too worried about where exactly I place it, but I just want to give some nice visual balance here. I think that looks pretty cool right there. And if you were doing a series of posters, this yellow dot could easily be a motif that you carry throughout all of the posters. And maybe you can do something like this where that photography is actually showing through that yellow dot. So really just kind of play around with photography and just see what you can do with your own Swiss Design posters. So just remember, everybody, make sure that at the end of the day, what you're creating makes sense for the brand, and it also communicates the message that you want to communicate, or the message that the client wants to communicate. Learn the rules, break them, but only when you know why you're breaking them. Thank you so much for watching this video today. If there's anything that you would like to see me cover in future videos, please let me know down in the comments. If you like this video, please hit like and subscribe, and click the bell for notifications to be notified of all future content. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.